thank you so much, everyone, for coming on time. I think several more will be joining us throughout the session, but thank you so much for being here for this session on IELTS speaking and writing overview and tips. We have our two presenters today, Michael Alpaugh and Susan Crosbie. Michael, did I pronounce your name correctly? It's Alpaugh?
Close enough. Alpaugh, yeah.
Alpaugh, okay. Thank you
That's
so
fine.
much for that correction. So Michael Alpaugh is an English language educator with over 14 years of experience teaching abroad and holds a Master in TEFL from the University of Birmingham, UK. He has worked as an IELTS expert with the British Council, as a US recruitment manager for East Asia at INTO University Partnerships, and as the Dean of English for academic purposes at Broward College, Vietnam. He was an English language fellow with the King Yang University Hanoi Metropolitan University, the U.S. Consulate American Center, and the Vietnamese People's Security Academy. He is a current fellow with the University of Languages and International Studies and the U.S. Embassy in Hanoi, Vietnam. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you.
We also have Susan Crosbie, whose first career was a Wall Street trader and returned to university in her 40s and earned a Doctor of Education from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. She has 20 plus years of overseas teaching experience in Kuwait, South Africa, Thailand, and Oman, and has been a virtual fellow in Brazil, India, Indonesia, and Russia. Currently, she is an English language fellow at the University of Savannakhet in Laos, and she is passionate about her students and their learning, and looks forward to another 10 months in Savannakhet starting in October 2024. Her interests include playing tennis, kayaking, reading, and walking on the beach, and she's learning to play pickleball. So thank you so much for attending, and thank you, Michael and Susan, for this session. Just to let you know that this session will be recorded and posted on the U.S. Embassy YouTube channel in a few days. So if you would like to rewatch this session, you can do so there. I will be posting a link in the chat box. One other thing I wanted to add as well is that Susan is also an IELTS speaking examiner. So these two really are the experts who can talk a lot about IELTS and how you can prepare. Thank you so much, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Claire. All right, so why don't we get started here? I'm going to cover the writing today. We're going to look at writing task 1 and task 2, and then my colleague Susan, she's going to talk about the speaking. And then when we're done, we're going to have some time for some Q&A. So if you have any questions about the writing or the speaking or IELTS in general, please save those to the end, and you can write them in the chat, and we can answer your questions. Okay, so feel free to write questions and think about anything that you'd like to know further if we don't cover it. But also, this is an interactive workshop, so I'm going to be asking questions, and I want you to write in the chat. So let's start with a quick discussion here. Can anyone write in the chat? Can you tell me, what does IELTS mean? Why is IELTS important to you? Why are you interested in IELTS? Why are you listening to this webinar? Has anyone in the chat taken IELTS before? And if so, how did you do? And number 4, what are you worried about with IELTS? Are you worried about your speaking, your writing? Are you worried about the examiner? So just quickly in the chat, write a quick answer to all of those questions or any of those questions that you can, while we wait for some more people to join. anybody listening there, just type an answer in the chat. Tell us about your experience. Wow, okay, so Claire, you took it? Yeah. I know, I think it would be difficult, yeah, sure. So especially for the listening, if you stop paying attention for even 1 second, you know, maybe you miss an answer. And then the writing style is a bit different. It's not really the writing style we would write on a day-to-day basis, or even necessarily for our universities. So, right. So to apply to university, unfamiliar topics. Yeah. So Susan's going to talk about that. The writing section is always hard. I promise you, after my session today, you won't think the writing section is so difficult. It's a bit overwhelming, yeah. Sure. To apply to university, right. So IELTS is extremely important if you're applying, especially in the UK and Australia, but increasingly so in the US. I mean, most universities accept it now in the US, and it's become a preferred exam. Okay, so maybe just 1 more minute. Tell us what you think. Any worries, or if you've taken the exam before? All right. Well, hopefully by the end of my session here, you guys will have a little bit more understanding of what the examiner is looking for when we're marking your writing. And let's get started. So in the chat again, can anybody tell me what are the 4 assessment criteria for IELTS writing? So what are the 4 things that we're looking for? What are the 4 things that we're using to give you a score? Can anybody write in the chat? So I'll give you a hint. One of them is grammar. Okay. It's a good guess, Judith. Yeah, so I'm talking about the writing. In the writing, what are the 4 things we're looking for? One of them is grammar. What do you think the other ones are? Okay. Some good guesses, yeah. Right. Okay, let's have a look. So the 4 things we're looking for are task achievement and task response. So task 1 and task 2 are a little different, but we're looking for that. We're looking for coherence and cohesion. We're looking for lexical resources. Some of you wrote that in the chat. And then we're looking for grammatical range and accuracy. So those are the 4 things. That's all we're looking for, okay? And that's how you're going to get your score. Each score, each part is marked individually, and then that's averaged into your grader score. And then task 1 and task 2 are averaged together to get your overall writing score. So what do these mean? Let's have a look. For task 1, academic, and task 2, general training, we have task response and task achievement. So that means, did you answer the question fully? And did you write 150 words? For task 2, general training, did your answer address all the points in the question? So it gives you different points, and it asks you to answer all parts. And did you provide a balanced argument and support your ideas with evidence and examples? Okay, so that's the only difference with marking that we have for task 1 and task 2. Let's look at the other part. Were all of your ideas relevant to the question? And did you write 250 words? So task 1 is 150 words. Task 2 is 250 words. So for both task 1 and task 2, the assessment is the same. For coherence and cohesion, is your writing easy to understand? And are your ideas well organized and clearly linked? Right? So coherence means the ability of the reader to understand what you're saying. It's very similar to speaking. Am I able to understand you? Are you coherent? And then for cohesion, that's like our glue, right? When things are cohesive, they stick together. And we're looking for cohesive devices, your ability to link sentences and link paragraphs and have a structure. And that's what we mean by that coherence and that cohesion. Do you have that structure? And is it logical? Next, we mean lexical resource. That's a fancy word for vocabulary. And I want you to notice here, it says a wide range of vocabulary accurately and effectively. Okay, so we're not looking for specific vocabulary. We're not looking for academic or scientific or any kind of specific vocabulary words. We're looking for a range of vocabulary that's accurate. So, are you using it correctly? And are you using it effectively? Okay, so I think this is one thing that students tend to not understand about the IELTS, is we're looking for a range and we're looking for appropriateness. And similar to that with grammar, is we're looking for a wide range of grammatical structures, and we're looking for accuracy and effectiveness. So again, we don't have a list of different grammatical structures that we're ticking off. What we're looking for is a wide range and appropriateness. So if you are talking about the past tense, then we're looking for structures that are in the past tense. If you're talking about the future, we're looking for future tenses. And then your ability to use them accurately and effectively. Okay, so again, we are looking for a broad range of structures and vocabulary. All right. So can anybody tell me in the chat, seems some of you have taken the exam before, how long should you take for task 1? So how many minutes? How many words should you write? See if you're paying attention, because I just told you for task 1. How much is task 1 worth? What percentage of your overall score is it worth? And what are some of the topics you're going to write about in task 1? So if you're familiar, if you know one or all of the bullet points, can you write in the chat? Tell us what you think. You remember what I said about how many words? I gave you the answer already. Yeah, good, Chris. Thanks. Hey, Judith, some good ideas. Yeah. Okay, about 1 more minute. Let's see what you know already about the about task 1. You're close, Tufshin. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Let's see. Okay, some really good guesses. You guys are close. So let's have a look here. For task 1, how long should you take? IELTS recommends 20 minutes, but you need to manage your own time. So you're going to get task 1 and task 2 at the same time, and then you have to manage that 20 minutes, okay? There's not going to be anybody telling you, okay, now it's time to go from task 1 to task 2. So this is one thing that students have difficulty with, is time management. And the real solution to this is to practice that timing. Sit down, give yourself 20 minutes, flip a paper over, and practice writing. And once you do that, you'll kind of start to feel natural and comfortable with that 20 minutes. But it's actually not a very long amount of time to be writing. So students often have difficulties with that. How many words? Oh, sorry, I have a typo there. How many words should you write? 150 words, but there is no upper limit. So you could, in theory, write 300, 400, 500, 600 words. But I really recommend writing 170 to 190 words, right? So just above the lower limit. Because really you want to focus on quality rather than quantity. If you're going over 200, 300, 400 words, you're writing too much. You're probably too focused on details. And the more you write, the more likely you are to go off topic and the more likely you are to make mistakes. So again, we want a tight, succinct, easy to understand, structured essay that focuses on answering the question rather than just showing how much you can write. Okay. How much is task one worth? So task one is worth 33.3% of your score. Again, so task one is only recommended for 20 minutes because it's worth less, right? So if you're having difficulty with task one, I hope you don't encounter this, but because it's worth significantly less than task two, you should move on from it if you're not able to answer the question, okay? What are you going to write about? I didn't see anybody say that in the chat. Oh, we did. Judith said some ideas. Yeah, Judith was right. So you're going to look at maps, diagrams, bar charts, tables, line graphs, pie charts, or a combination of two charts. So you have like a bar chart, for example, and a pie chart, and you're comparing those. Okay, so some technical language, some ideas, and some figures and data of something you've probably never encountered before. Okay, so that's what task one entails. Let's have a look here. How should we organize our essay for task one? So we've been given our task, and we need to think about how we're going to organize our essay. The most common format that's recommended is 4 paragraphs. Okay? Your first paragraph is going to be your introduction. You can paraphrase the question here. IELTS in the writing and IELTS in the speaking, and as well as the reading and the listening, we are looking for your ability to paraphrase. Okay? So the first thing you want to do right at the beginning is paraphrase the question. I didn't say copy the question. I don't want to see you use language from the question. I want to see you use synonyms, and I want you to describe the question in your own words. Okay, so right off the bat, you want to use paraphrasing. Then you want to provide an overview. This is your most important paragraph. I'm going to show you why it's your most important paragraph, but keep this in mind. If you don't know what an overview is, then this might be why you're having some issues with task one. We have body paragraph A, and this is where you want to describe a main feature in detail. Body paragraph B, you're describing another main feature in detail. So we have a well-organized essay here that's going to answer all parts of the question and provide the examiner with everything that they're looking for. Introduction, overview, body paragraph, A and B. Now, you might want a body paragraph C if you have a lot of information, like maybe you did have a comparison or something, and you just have way too much information. You have a new idea, then a fifth paragraph is appropriate. Okay, but in general, you're going to be writing 4 paragraphs. Some common questions. Should we write a conclusion in task 1? And can I put my overview in a body paragraph or at the end of my essay? Can anybody in the chat answer my question? Anybody know? Let's give it about 2 minutes. Maybe Claire and Susan, do you know? Okay, some good answers in the chat. Okay, so great answers. Yeah, so a conclusion is not necessary in task 1. You're not making recommendations, you're not giving your opinion, and the information that goes into a conclusion, you're going to provide that in your overview. Okay? So please don't write a conclusion in task 1. But you absolutely need an overview. Can I put my overview in a body paragraph or at the end? Yes, you can. However, I don't recommend it. Why? Because the examiner is looking for your overview. You want it to be very obvious and easy to find. And if you're putting it in your body paragraph or you're putting it at the end, it's not going to be as easy to find and as obvious, and you may make a mistake. So my recommendation is to follow this format: introduction, overview, body paragraph A, body paragraph B. If you're an extremely skilled writer and you're very, very confident in your ability to write an overview, then you can maybe put it in a different place. But I highly recommend doing that, not doing that. Okay? So, again, I mentioned that the overview is going to be our most important paragraph. So let's take a look at what the band descriptors say about an overview. Before I do that, can anybody tell me what an overview is? Why am I talking about an overview? What is it? Yeah, Chris, why is an overview important? I'm going to show you in a minute, but can anybody tell me what it is? Overview. Yeah. All right, Mohammed, thank you. Yeah. So an overview is a summary of the main or most important points in a graph, chart, process, or map. All right. So we're looking at your ability to summarize the main idea. Okay. We're not putting details in the overview. Think of it like your thesis statement. It's what's going on overall, right? So I should really be able to read your overview and understand. I can visualize what the chart will look like in my head. Okay. So you're going to tell me what's happening on the page. What do the band descriptors say? I'm going to share with you the band descriptors. Give me 1 second here, and we'll look at why the overview is so important. Okay. Can everybody see that? I know it's a little small, but I'll zoom in here. So these are the official band descriptors. This is the public version, British Council, IDP in Cambridge. These are available online to you. Okay, so if you're practicing your writing and you want to improve, these are what the examiner uses to give you a score. So let's have a look here. Band 5 here. Can everybody see that? Band 5. So band 5, a very average IELTS score. For the overview, it says recounts details mechanically with no clear overview. All right, is that clear? And we can see it's mentioned here in 4 as well. All right, so no clear overview, band 5. Now let's look at band 6. Presents an overview with information appropriately selected. Okay, so it's very, very easy to see. Band 5, no clear overview. Band 6 and above, you need an overview. Okay, so I'll say it again. If you want to achieve higher than a band 5, you must provide an overview. It's in the band descriptors. The examiner is looking for it. So please put it after your introduction, make it obvious for us, make it easy to understand, give us a summary of what's happening in the essay. Okay? It's necessary. Yes, very good. Okay.
Michael, could you
Yeah.
share that document in the chat box?
Yeah, I will. When Susan takes over, I'll share it. I'll share it. Yeah.
Thank you.
But again, they're available on the British Council and IELTS and IDP website. Okay. So again, what do they say? If you want to band 4 or 5, no overview. If you want to band over band 6, you must provide an overview. It's part of it. So oftentimes students they'll get a very high score in reading, get a very high score in listening. They'll do okay with speaking, and then they'll get a 5 in writing. And the reason they got a 5 in writing is most likely they didn't provide an overview or a thesis statement in their writing. Okay. All right. So let's have a look here. Here's an example. Okay, this is kind of an older example. What are the main features? In your head or in the chat, can you write a quick overview for this? You should be able to tell me in one sentence what is happening in general in this chart. So take a moment, have a look, read through it, and think about how would you write an overview for this? What are the main ideas? Or the color might be a little difficult. But in general, what kind of trends, what kind of changes over time are happening? See if I can get one overview and then I'll move on. Okay, well, here's my example. This example is okay. In general, the duration of national and international fixed line calls and mobile calls increase, whereas local fixed line calls rose and then fell over the period. So when I read this, I can visualize the chart in my head. I don't have any details, but I have the main idea of what's happening in this chart. Okay, so that's an okay overview. If you had something similar, or you didn't really have that, that's okay. But that's kind of what we're looking for. Yeah. So Michael, that's a good example in the chat. Okay. So here's some tips for task 1. Make a list of your common errors before you start writing. Before you start practicing, start thinking about what mistakes you make in your brainstorming phase with your writing. You can even write down those errors and check them off and make sure you're not making them, checking yourself. Take your time and read the instructions. Think about what the IELTS is asking you to do, and what kind of chart you have, and how you're going to approach the essay. So don't just start writing. You need to read, you need to think, and you need to think about the structure. We're looking for signposting and discourse markers. So again, remember we talked about that coherence and cohesion, right? These words, these expressions, they create coherence and cohesion, and your ability to use synonyms and describe change. We're looking for that in your lexical resources as well. All right, so please use synonyms. Don't copy language from the question. Obviously, you're going to have to copy some of the language from the charts and the data sometimes, but as much as possible, try to use synonyms, try to vary your language, and try to show off that vocabulary that you study and that you learn. You need to practice describing change. So as we saw in the example, it's talking about things that are happening over time, right? These charts, they're all describing change over time. So really think about vocabulary and lexical resources and grammar that will help you to describe change. Again, you want to use the correct tenses. I talked about that before, but we're not looking for specific tenses. If you look at the band descriptors, it doesn't mention anything about specific amount of tenses, sorry. We're looking for the correct tenses for what you're talking about. And that's the same for speaking as well. All right, focus on the main features. Don't include every piece of data you see. So in the band descriptors as well, I think I read that it said provides an overview, but recounts details mechanically. So think about it like a robot. if you're mechanical, you're just taking information and you're copying it, you're placing it here. You're not internalizing it, you're not reformulating it and explaining it. All you're doing is kind of mechanically explaining what's happening in the chart and in the data. So you need to be able to, again, summarize, paraphrase, and explain what's happening rather than picking and just copying and pasting into your essay. Okay, so focus on the main features. One more time, should we give our opinion? Anybody in the chat, yes or no? Do I want your opinion about local and fixed line mobile phones in the UK in 1998? Yes, very good. So please don't give your opinion. We're not asking you to editorialize. We're asking you to give an objective answer to what's happening on the paper. Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, let's move on to task 2. So one more time, we've got task 1 covered. How long should you take for task 2? I already told you, I think. How many words should you write for task 2? How much is task 2 worth? And what kind of things are you going to write about in task 2? So if you remember from task 1, you might be able to guess for task 2. Oh, we have some Vietnamese people in the chat. Who can tell me the answers to these questions about task 2? All right, can anybody tell me what we're going to write about? You guys have the format down. What are we going to talk about? Our opinion? Sometimes. Okay, good. So how long should you take for task 2? If you remember, I said task 1 was 20 minutes. Therefore, task 2 is going to be 40 minutes. You have an hour overall. And you need to manage your own time. Again, so nobody's going to tell you it's time to move on to task 1. It's time to do task 2. You need to manage that. So I really recommend for students to practice with, you can use your phone with a stopwatch and give yourself the prompt and practice that timing, because what you don't want to be is feeling rushed when you're in the exam. Task 1 can be quite difficult. Task 2 can be quite long. And you don't want to be at the end of your essay trying to scramble and add something new to your conclusion or forget to add a part. So timing is actually a big thing for writing, but it's something that you can practice and it's something that you can work on at home on your own. So, I really recommend sitting down, practicing for 1 hour, turning your phone off, and, using a stopwatch. Great for teachers as well. That's a great activity to do in class. All right. How many words should you write? So 250 words, and there's no upper limit. So again, you can write 500 words if you want to, but we want to aim for quality over quantity. Again, we don't want to just have this essay that rambles on and on and on and on and on and just goes on and on. We're not looking for that. We're not looking for your ability to write 3 or 4 or 5 pages. We want an essay that follows a structure that's coherent and it answers the question. Okay, so please don't write 400, 500 words. Okay, it's not gonna help you. You're more likely to go off topic. You're more likely to, again, recount details mechanically. You're more likely to make more grammatical mistakes and more spelling errors than you would if you had a tight, compact essay. So really think about that. Again, that's something you can practice as well. Look at your word count when you're writing an essay. If you're writing too much, you're not writing enough, that's something you can practice and work on. If you're doing computer-based IELTS, one of the benefits is actually as you type, there's a word counter at the bottom, so you don't have to spend any time counting your words. But you know, some of you younger people might enjoy that, you know, typing a little more natural for you. But it's nice that they count the words for you. All right, how much is task 2 worth? 66.66%. So it's worth significantly more than task 1. So therefore, you should take more time writing it. What does task 2 consist of? I see some answers in the chat saying it's going to be our opinion, whether we agree or disagree. Yeah, some of that's right. Let's have a look here. Task 2 will be 1 or 2 statements on a topic or a quote giving someone else's opinion on a topic. So somebody says this, you know, what do you think about this? A specific task or question for you to answer. You're going to get advantages and disadvantages. Discuss both statements and give your opinion. So for example, some people say this, other people say that. What do you think? Okay. To what extent do you agree or disagree and think this is a positive or negative trend? Students tend to not like this answer because they want to kind of be binary. They want to say, I agree, I totally agree, or I don't or I disagree. To what extent sometimes we'll give them difficulties because they're not sure. And it's hard to kind of be in the middle and give a coherent answer. So think about that. And how realistic do you think something is? Okay, so those are the kind of questions you're going to get. So yeah, to all of you in the chat, we're looking for your opinion. If IELTS wants your opinion, they're going to ask you for it. Okay. So we have our questions. We've been given a prompt. What do we need to do when we start? First thing we need to do is analyze the question, identify the key requirements. So is this asking me for the advantages and disadvantages of something? Is it asking me to evaluate? Is it asking me to give my opinion to what extent I agree with something or how realistic something is? You really need to sit down and think about the question and the key requirements before you start writing. What students like to do is they're unprepared for the time limit and they get nervous and they panic and they read the question and they see a keyword and then they just start writing and they go until the time limit. And what happens is their essay is incoherent because they get new ideas that they didn't plan for at the end. They're adding new things to the conclusion. They have maybe competing ideas in the essay. And for the reader, it's very difficult to follow when someone is just writing kind of off the top of their head in a stream of consciousness without a plan. So we want to formulate a plan, and we want a coherent essay, and we want to take time at the beginning to address those key requirements. So we need to brainstorm. Brainstorm ideas that you want to use in your body or examples, and then synonyms you want to use. Again, we're looking for synonyms. They're required. You need to decide a position or opinion. So I mentioned before, students often will start writing, and then at the end, they will decide their opinion. And it may contradict what they wrote earlier, and it may contradict what they had in their introduction. And as an examiner, I think, wow, this essay is incoherent. This person doesn't really have a strong opinion. So I recommend for students to choose an opinion, whether that means you agree or disagree, or you hate it or you love it, or you're in between. Whatever it is, decide that opinion at the beginning, write it on your notes, write it on your essay, and stick with it. Keep that opinion throughout the essay. Because if your opinion changes, then your essay, it's not coherent, okay? We want to select and organize our ideas. So similar to task 1, task 2 has a structure as well, all right? And that's the idea, explain, example, structure. I'll take a look at that here. We also want to consider linking phrases and topic sentences. I'll cover that. But again, that coherence and cohesion, those linking words, first, next, in addition, I'd like to add all of those words that you learn for transitions. We're looking for that in task 2 as well. Okay, so let's look at an example. Alternative forms of transport should be encouraged and international laws introduced to control car ownership and use. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So in this example, we might start with an introduction, body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2, and then a conclusion. So as you can see, another 4-paragraph essay, right? In body paragraph 1, we might discuss alternative transport forms. Body paragraph 2, we might discuss the value of international rules or whatever our example is. But as you can see, what I want you to see here is that we have a structure. We have an introduction, a body, and conclusion. And each paragraph has its own main idea. Okay, so that's our structure. But what are we doing in those paragraphs? Let's have a look. Our introduction paragraph. So very similar to task 1. This is really your introduction, your overview. That's kind of the base of your essay, and everything should be structured around this. So first thing we want to do, just like in task 1, we want to paraphrase the question. So again, the IELTS is looking for paraphrase. We want you to paraphrase the question, task 1 and task 2. And in speaking as well, please paraphrase. Okay. That means you need to restate the question with different words that have the same meaning. This is your chance to use your lexical resources and to use synonyms. Then we need a thesis statement. Does anyone know what a thesis statement is? Can anyone in the chat tell me what a thesis statement? Kind of. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's similar to your overview. So this is the most important sentence in your essay. It summarizes your opinion in one sentence. Okay, so it tells us what you think, what the essay is going to be about. So it's very similar to the overview. And again, as examiners, we are looking for that. We're looking for this structure. Paraphrase the question, give us your thesis statement. And then you can do what's called an outline statement. All right, an outline statement is telling us what you're going to discuss in your body paragraphs. So for example, you would say, in this essay, I will cover A, B, and C. And then paragraph A will cover that topic, paragraph B, paragraph C. And we want to keep that same organization. Okay, so that's our introduction. And as you can see, it's a very logical flow. It's very easy for the reader to understand what the essay is about, what your opinion is, and what you're going to talk about in the essay. Okay, so this gives you a structure that you can follow as you go throughout your essay. You've got your opinion, you've got your position, and then your body paragraphs about what you're going to talk about. All right, so that's our introduction paragraph. Let's look at our body paragraphs. So we've decided on a position, and we've decided what we're going to talk about. Our body paragraphs need what's called a topic sentence. Similar to your thesis statement, it's a simple sentence introducing the theme of your paragraph. So the thesis statement is the theme of your essay. Topic sentence is the theme of your paragraph. All right? So what is your paragraph about? So for example, in my opinion, global warming is the main cause of natural disasters. So we need supporting explanatory statements. So we have that topic, we have that idea, and we need to support it. And we need to give examples and evidence. So idea, topic sentence, explanation, and example. This sequence creates coherence, right? It's very easy to understand. And then those linking words, they help us create cohesion, right? So it's actually very formulaic. Your introduction, each sentence has a purpose. In your body, each sentence has a purpose. You have an idea, you have an explanation, a couple sentences, and then you have examples, a couple sentences. And that's your body paragraph. And that is coherent, and that is what the examiner is looking for. All right? Okay, so again, before we start writing, we need to make a plan. Analyze the question. Think about what the question is asking you. Rewrite the question. Break the question down. Figure out what it wants you to do. And then you need to brainstorm. Think about examples. Think about ideas. And think about synonyms and vocabulary you want to use, maybe an idiom. And then plan out your structure. So write introduction. I need my thesis statement. And what do I need in my introduction? What 3 things do I need in my topic sentence? And you can create an outline before you start writing. And I promise you that'll help you have a very, very organized essay. We're looking for complex sentences, okay? Complex does not mean complicated, right? These are simple sentences put together with cohesive devices. So we're looking for relative clauses, subordinate clauses, conditionals, and compound sentences. Your ability to take 2 ideas, combine them in a sentence, rather than having simple sentence structure, okay? So we are looking for complex sentences. And we want you to paraphrase the question. Okay, I've covered that a few times. And you must have a topic sentence in your body paragraph. So just like the overview in task 1, we need a thesis statement in our introduction, and we need topic sentences in our body paragraphs. Okay, so that's all I have for writing. If you have a question, I want you to save it until the end. Susan is going to talk about the speaking section, and then we have time for Q&A at the end. So if you have a writing question, that's great. I'll cover that when Susan is finished, and then likewise, when Susan is done with her speaking, we can cover your questions for speaking as well. Okay? All right. I hope that will help you out with your writing. And I'm going to hand it over to Miss Susan here. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Michael. Wow, you're a hard act to follow. I hope I can be as informative as you were. I think big cheers to you. Thank you for everything you did to inform our audience here. Let me share my screen. And we will get started with the speaking side of. Can everybody see? Okay. So first of all, I'm the continuing part of the writing and speaking, and I'm going to talk to you today about what to expect when you go into the speaking exam. First of all, thank you also to Miss Claire for the introduction. Now, I'd like to know about you. Can you all put where you're located in the chat? Let me get some feeling for where you are. Anybody want to share? Oh, Cake from Savannah Kid, Indonesia. Wow, Japan, Indonesia, Vietnam. What a lovely crowd. Thank you all for joining us. We're so glad you're here. Big warm welcome from Savannah, Laos, where I am. And it's very hot, about 40 degrees. And we're coming into our New Year's celebration. So, Sabay Pimay to everyone. Okay, and before we continue, I'd like to give a big thanks and a big shout out to our previous presenter, Michael, He has been invaluable in helping me get this organized. Thank you, Michael. Okay, let's jump right in here to the speaking exam. Anybody, I'm going to do what Michael did. Anybody have any idea what the format of the speaking section is? How many parts are there? How long is each part? What kind of questions do you think you're going to hear in each part? Anybody want to share with me in the chat? Wow. 3 sections, good, great. How long do you think, tell me, first of all, how long do you think the whole test is going to take you? Michael said the whole writing part was an hour. How long do you think the whole speaking test is going to take you? We have some guys who did their homework, I see. It's a short test, you're right. It's about 15, between 12 to 15 minutes. So, not a long time. The dang, dialogue, monologue, dialogue, good. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So let's explore those areas. How long is the test? And what should you expect in each section of the tests? Okay. Having a little trouble here, technically. Okay, part 1. Part 1 won't be very long, but it will be a section, maybe 4 to 5 minutes. And this is a time when the speaking examiner will want you to relax and get comfortable. So the questions will be on familiar topics. We'll go into more of those in a minute. Part 2, this will be you and you as a candidate, your turn to really shine. You'll be given preparation time to prepare what you're going to say, and then it will be your turn to talk for about 2 minutes about the topic. Part 3 will be about the same topic as you had in part 2, only at this point, you're going to have a discussion with the examiner. You're going to have a conversation about that topic. Again, only lasting for about 4 to 5 minutes. Part 1. When you arrive at the testing venue, the examiner will greet you. In my venue, I usually open the door and I invite the candidate to please be seated. As I open the door, I must turn my recorder on so that the people know exactly that I have met you, greeted you, and politely invited you into the room. That recorder will stay on during the whole session. And this is to make sure that you get a fair mark, because we as examiners are also listened to make sure that we have graded the candidate appropriately. As you're seated and get comfortable, there's usually a bottle of water and some tissues for you to make you feel relaxed. The examiner will then introduce himself or herself to you. You will also be asked to show some identification. I know that you will have registered as you come in, but you must also bring a piece of identification into the room, the testing room, and that will be all that you can bring in. You will probably be asked to take your watch off. You won't be able to bring any pens and paper. All you'll need to do is make sure you have a piece of ID. Then in the first part, the examiner will ask you get to know questions. Like, are you a student or are you working? Where do you live? How many bedrooms in your house? There'll be questions to make you feel comfortable and relaxed so that you can do your very best during the speaking test. Common questions: where do you work? Tell me about what you're studying, about your hometown, if your house has a garden, if you grow flowers. Very easy, very relaxing questions for you. Then the candidate will ask you about 2 more topics after the introduction. These topics could be about, there'll be 2 of them. It could be about art, whether or not you like art or you draw art. And you won't have to volunteer information except after you're asked a question. So don't worry that you just have to talk. This is a part that the examiner will ask you questions and you respond. Here's some more topics, maybe about birthdays in your family. How do you celebrate them? Are you the oldest in your family? How many brothers and sisters do you have? Did you have to take responsibility if you were one of the older children? They might ask you about clothes, shopping for clothes, traditional clothes. When do you wear those traditional clothes? What do you eat when you wear traditional clothes? Is there a ceremony or a festival? They might ask you about computers, about finding knowledge online, about studying, how computers are used to help you, how computers might be used to hurt students. Another very easy question would be your daily routine. What do you do in the morning? You get up, you go to school, you wash. Make sure that little topics like that you think are ordinary, those are topics that are easy for you to prepare for, just in case they ask you. They might ask you about dictionaries, words. How do you find out what words mean? They might ask you about your family and your friends. What do you do with them? How often do you see them if you're a student and you live on campus? They might ask you about flowers, celebrations with flowers, growing flowers. They might ask you about food, traditional food, fast food. Fast food might lead into unhealthy food. They might ask you about going out, going to movies, going to plays, going to art shows. They might ask you about happiness. What makes you happy? What makes you unhappy? Hobbies. Do you have a hobby? If you do, could you describe your hobby if the examiner asked you what your favorite hobby is? The internet. Are you good at surfing? What do you use the internet for? How often do you use the internet? Your leisure time. What do you do in your leisure time? Some of us maybe don't have a lot of leisure time. So is it important that we develop our leisure time to make sure that we have a relaxed, balanced life? They might ask you about music. What kind of music do you like? Do you make music? Do you create music? Your neighborhood. Who lives in your neighborhood? What can you do in your neighborhood? Newspapers. How many of us read newspapers these days? Seems we get all our news on the internet. Pets. Anybody have a pet that they could talk about? A horse, a dog, cat? Any unusual pets? An iguana? A lizard? What about reading? How do you read? Do you listen to books? Do you read books? What about shopping? Do you shop online? Do you like to go to the mall? Do you like to shop? Sport. Sport is a good one, right? Because everybody knows about sport. TV. How often do you watch TV? What do you watch on TV? Who do you like to watch on TV? Transport. Does your town have a public transportation system? If not, do you drive everywhere? Is the cost of petrol high? The weather. Is the weather changing where you live? Topics, these are just some examples, but these are topics that you'll be familiar with. But you can become more familiar with the vocabulary if you look at these topics and do a little homework before you take the speaking test.
Hi, Susan, just to pop in, can you speak a little louder? Some people in the chat saying they're having difficulty hearing you.
I'm so sorry. Is this better?
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry about that. Let me see if I can, I might have to stop my share. Is this better? I can't see the chat for some reason.
Yeah, that's okay. I think maybe just come closer to your microphone.
Okay, let me see here. Is this better, everyone? Better? Okay, sorry about that. Put my teacher voice on, right? Okay, so when you come into the room, don't forget, the examiner will ask you to tell him your name and will want to see a piece of your identification. Don't worry about smiling or eye contact. You know, everything they tell you when you're going to make a presentation, don't worry about that. Worry about keeping yourself calm and confident and doing the very best that you can, because that's what the examiner wants you to do. And that's why the examiner has asked you the first set of questions to make you relax and feel confident in your speaking. Some of the questions will just be yes or no, but some of them, the examiner will want you to extend your answer, to give more, to say more, to hear your vocabulary. Having said that, we don't want you to tell us an essay. I had a student one time, an examinee, when I said, and where are you from? And I'll use my example. Well, I'm from Minnesota. You know, it's in the middle of the United States and the climate is very cold. No, you know, don't go overboard with extending. Try and find a nice middle path of giving enough information. And please don't memorize your answer, because memorized answers won't show your natural self. The examiner wants you to see your natural self. Practice the vocabulary that about some of the topics. There are many more topics you'll find online, but don't memorize. And remember, stay on the topic. I think Michael emphasized that in the writing. I also have to emphasize that in the speaking. If you don't understand something, please ask the examiner. We are allowed to tell you definitions of words. Don't pretend to know the word, because you might give an answer that's incorrect. And then your mark will go down for staying off topic. And again, the first part is made for you to relax and to feel natural. So try to follow that natural speech that you usually have. Pronounce your words, give your correct emphasis, and speak slowly and surely. It's about you, don't forget. And the examiner is there to help you to do your best. Part 2. Now, this is a part where you can really shine. It's a monologue. Don't be nervous, because after part 1, you will feel very relaxed. The examiner will make sure that you had topics that you're familiar with. So part 2 will be up to you, but you'll be able to do it, because you won't just be given a topic and told talk about it. The examiner will give you a topic on a paper and will say to you, you have one, and the examiner will give you a piece of paper and a pencil, and say, I'm going to give you a topic. I'd like you to talk about it for 1.5 to 2 minutes. Here is a pencil and a paper to prepare. I would like you to talk about, and then the examiner will introduce the topic, and the topic will also be on the paper that you were given. Also on the paper, there will be some ideas for you to talk about. Okay, so piece of paper and a pencil to take notes while you're preparing for 1 minute, and then you will talk for 2 minutes. A suggestion I have for you is to take notes on the paper. Don't try to write full sentences and make an essay, because you won't have enough time. Just write down ideas like you prepared for the writing. You made a little outline. Try to do the same thing when you're speaking in your preparation. Just take a couple or 3 notes to help guide you through the speaking. And absolutely, you can look at that paper when you're speaking. Don't be nervous. You can look down, and you can that can help you formulate your speaking. But the examiner wants to hear you talk for 2 minutes. So if you don't quite get to the full time, the examiner might say to you, can you tell me something more about that topic? So let's look at some topics that you might be asked to talk about. Describe an interesting educational place that you visited and would like to go again. And here's some suggestions for prompts. Describe what kind of place it is and where it's located. Describe what people do there. Give reasons as to why you would like to visit again. Now, when we come to question and answers, questions and comments, if you would like some more topics, let me know, and I've got a screen that I can pull up and share with you and show you some more potential topics that you might want to think about. Okay, so some reminders as you prepare part 2 to do your speaking. You have 1 minute to prepare. After the examiner gives you the pencil and the paper, you will be timed for 1 minute. At the end of 1 minute, the examiner will say to you, can you start speaking now, please? And that will be your cue to start your 2-minute speech. Make sure you understand the topic. If you don't, make sure you ask the examiner. Actually, you could ask as you're doing your preparation before you do your notes. Don't hesitate. You can ask us. We're glad to help you. And
Okay, it looks like Susan may have disconnected here. Why don't we wait 1 second and I can hop in if Susan isn't able to come back. Hi, Susan, you back? You're muted.
Ah, I'm back. Can has my screen shared or no?
No, we can't see your screen.
My many apologies. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now you've prepared to speak. You're ready to do you've done your 1 minute preparation. And you're ready to make your presentation. Here's some, did I miss a slide? No, sorry about that. When you speak, try to extend that bullet point. Expand the idea. Don't go crazy with, like Michael said, the more you write, the chances are that you'll go off topic. But do try to extend it so that the examiner can hear your vocabulary and your use of words. Because these bullet points are suggestions. They're not absolutes that you have to talk about. Expand your main idea. Michael, you might want to jump in and help me with this. Personal experiences are good to give examples. Is it okay to tell a little fabrication?
Yes, so it's fine if you need to lie. So we don't encourage it, but if you are not able to answer the question, then it's okay to make something up or talk about something your family members did or something you saw in a movie. I think in this part, what you need to remember is that we're looking for your English ability. We're not looking for your ability to tell the truth or anything like that. So, you know, we're listening for the your lexical resources, your grammatical range and accuracy, and your pronunciation.
Right. Thank you. Because some people might not have had the experience that they're asked to describe, and they might have to fabricate, make something up, and that's okay. The biggest point is please relax and keep going. And you've got your outline from your notes, so you'll be able to remain coherent and you'll be able to stay on task. Okay, part 3. Gonna last for 4 to 5 minutes. And it's gonna be the same topic as part 2. Only now you're going to be involved in a dialogue, more of a discussion with the examiner. And there'll be deeper questions. There'll be an extension of the idea as opposed to just focusing on that one idea. There'll be more in-depth questions that the examiner will want you to discuss because we're looking for your use of vocabulary, your use of English, how you can express yourself. It's more general and abstract than part 1. Part 1 will be superficial, get to know you kind of, how do you think? What do you think of this idea? Yes, no, little expanding. In part 3, we're really expecting you to use English and to show us your use of synonyms, antonyms, and to show your abstract thinking through your verbal usage of the language. It'll be a discussion, conversation. Sometimes you might want to ask the questions or be the initiator of an idea. That's fine. If sometimes at higher levels, you'll find more engaging conversations. But if you're not at that level, it's okay to let the examiner lead it and take you to the next idea. But as you answer, try to be completely engaged in the conversation. Okay, so what kinds of questions do you think you're going to get in part 3? Part 2, you had a topic. Now, you might be asked your opinion about that topic. And not just give your opinion, but the examiner will probe you with questions about your opinion. And you'll be expected to follow through using good vocabulary and showing the examiner how you use English. You might be able to be given the topic that you have to evaluate someone else's opinion. Why is their opinion correct or incorrect? You might be given a topic about the future, that you have to predict something that might happen. Or it might be about the past, and you have to predict based on the past what might happen in the future. Cause and effect. Climate change. That's a very good question these days. What happened to make this happen? The cause and the effect of something. Hypothetical. Is it true, imaginary, unreal situations? You might have to step out of yourself and put yourself in an unreal situation to talk about it. Many of you have probably done the old Venn diagram of compare and contrast. So if the discussion leads to compare and contrast, think about that Venn diagram. How are the two things different to contrast them? Or how are the two things the same to compare them? They might ask you a question about the past and about today, especially, well, most of you probably know that I live in the Sultanate of Oman, and 50 years ago, before Sultan Qaboos came to power, things were very different. And so it's very interesting to ask candidates about how their grandparents lived as opposed to how they live today. So that would be a good question for them to ask you. But don't forget, we don't choose the questions as the candidate enters the room. We already have to fill in the sheet as to which topic we're going to give you, which topics we're going to give you throughout the throughout our conversations. So we can't change that as we get in there. Everything is pre-written by us. We choose without knowing the candidate's name. So you might get a question about shopping. As a man, you might get a question about shopping for a gift or buying a gift of a purse or a wallet. So don't be alarmed that we're setting you up for something to make you talk about something difficult, because we have chosen that topic long before we saw you or long before we knew who you were coming in the room. So, what are some takeaways from part 3? This is a very good chance for you to show your use of language. After part 2 and you gave your monologue, now you can really expand and have a good discussion with the examiner. Please make sure you try to use full sentences. Sometimes it's not necessary, but as Michael said, we're in the writing, we're looking the way you construct your paragraph, the way you construct your sentences. We're looking for the same thing the way you speak. And we want you to extend. We're going to help you extend because that's where we will help lead the conversation. If you don't hear, you don't understand, ask the examiner to rephrase or to explain a vocabulary word. By this point in part 3, you probably should know the vocabulary, but maybe you didn't hear something correctly. Don't be afraid to ask the examiner to say it again. And really important, sometimes I've had people just look at me and go, like, I don't know. Please give an answer because it's being recorded. And your mark, if someone plays it back and wants to give you a mark or double check the examiner's mark, they won't be able to see that you gave a shoulder shrug. So make sure you give an answer. And think about what the examiner has asked you before you give that answer. But make sure you answer. Okay, so that's the 3 parts in a nutshell. How are you going to get a mark for this? What are we looking for in your speaking? Fluency and coherence. Are you speaking fluently? Are you speaking, well, no, we want to hear you speaking sentences that flow. Like a river is flowing, we want your conversation to flow. And as Michael explained, coherence, the glue that holds them together. Your lexical resource, we're looking for your use of vocabulary. We're looking for your grammatical range and your accuracy. A very common error is singular and plural nouns and verbs. When we get nervous, we tend to make those mistakes. So when you're in there, try to relax. And of course, we're looking for your pronunciation. How do you pronounce? Do you enunciate the words? Let's look at those more closely. You can always download them, but I'm going to show you in a minute. Fluency and coherence. Do you speak in a way that flows, that it's easy to follow you? It's easy to understand, like that river flowing downstream? Are your ideas linked together? Do they glue together? Or are you jumping all over the place? That's why during part 2, it's so important that you organize your notes and keep looking towards that task. Lexical resource, vocabulary. Try during part 2 and part 3 to really show the examiner that you can expand the vocabulary, that you can use synonyms, that you have a wide range of references in the English language. Also, can you explain your ideas? Do you know what you're talking about? Even if you don't understand a small word, are you able to circumlocute the language so that people can understand you? Can you communicate your idea? It's always good to reach for vocabulary, to try new words. Don't go too crazy though. Make sure that you do your homework so you come in with a very good vocabulary that you're able to use. Grammar and accuracy. This is really important. Subject-verb agreement is a common error. If you can't expand, if your grammar is limited, stick with the basics and reach a little bit. But accuracy is going to be very important. Can you use more sophisticated structures? Can you use those compound sentences and complex sentences instead of simple sentences? Just like in writing, can you use it in speaking? Accuracy. We're looking for your accuracy. And of course, pronunciation. We don't want you to mumble. We want you to speak clearly so that we can understand, and the recording will pick it up so that if there is a question, somebody has to listen to the recording, that you are clearly understood and the point you are making is right there on the tape recorder. When you're making a sentence or a question, are you putting the stress in the right place? Are you using the right intonation? Can they hear excitement if you're talking about something exciting? Can you hear it in your voice? That helps add great meaning to your talk, to your speech. And of course, individual words. It's a very common thing. If you haven't heard a word pronounced correctly, but you've learned the word by reading it, of course, it's a common error not to pronounce it correctly. So maybe if you come across words that you think you might be good for your vocabulary, log on to the internet and find out how they're pronounced. Where do you put the stress on the word? Okay. Here we go with our band descriptors. Michael chose band 6, 4, 5. Whoops. I like to go with band 6 because band 6 is pretty much where most teachers have to qualify in the Sultanate. So I like to look at band 6 as a benchmark. I don't know, can you see this? Band 5 says usually maintains flow of speech. Band 6, again, willing to speak at length, though may lose coherence at times. So it's really important, again, that jump between band 5 and band 6 to make sure that you're at a qualifying mark. Michael, did you want to jump in and say something?
No, I was just saying it's not really readable. It's too far zoomed out.
Oh dear. I tell you what, I will put it in the chat, like the one you're going to put in. How's that sound at the end?
Sure.
Okay, great. Sorry about that, guys. Here we go. Can I zoom in like that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, great. You can see a band 5 usually maintains the flow of speech, whereas band 6 is willing to speak at length. And again, this is probably one of your make or break bands. Band 5 is a very common band to get. and you can go to the internet, to YouTube, and listen up and hear a lot of them. But band 6 really puts you a cut above, as it does in the writing. Yes, nothing's perfect, but this is your make or break band, as Michael pointed out in writing. It will also be in the speaking. Oops. How'd I do that? Okay. Okay. Let's talk about a few. Oh, do I have questions in the chat? Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Let's talk about some final things to remember as you come into the speaking test. Practice, practice, practice. We all know if you want to be a good swimmer, you have to swim, swim, swim. If you want to be a good writer, you got to write, write, write. If you want to be a good speaker, you got to speak, speak, speak. So go to the internet, find a native speaker in your neighborhood, make a recording of yourself and play it back. How did you do? What do you think of yourself? How could you improve your speaking? Practice. And this is a really important thing, is that this is a test of your level of English. It's not a placement test. You're not going to get a mark on a final exam from it. It's not how much you know about a subject. It's about your ability to communicate in language. Michael reminded us, when you write, to paraphrase. You can do the same thing in speaking. If the examiner asks you a question, paraphrase the question to get you started. Don't forget, extend your answers. Try to keep going. Don't just stop. Try to find some ideas so that the examiner can hear you and your language. Give reasons. Why or why not? And of course, watch YouTube videos. The YouTube videos will be of many, many different levels. So if you think, oh, I'd really like to get, we all want to get to a level 9, right? Because that's native speaker. But is that really realistic? Find a level that you think might be realistic. Listen to it. Then go up a level. Listen to that one. Then keep being progressive as you listen to the YouTube videos. And they will take you through the entire speaking exam. From the time the examiner greets the candidate until the time the candidate leaves the room. So you'll have a very good idea of what goes on, what to expect. So when you go in, you should feel very relaxed and ready to participate in the speaking exam. The examiner will stop you if you start to speak during the long term and you get going and it comes to 2 minutes. The examiner will say, "Thank you very much," and will stop you. And that's okay. Don't worry about that. We want to hear you speak, so keep going as long as you can on part 2. And please don't memorize any answers, because what if you memorize something and it's the wrong topic? Oh my goodness, you have to stay on topic. So please don't memorize answers. Pace yourself, especially in part 2. Take your notes, make everything methodical, so when you start to speak, you're focused and you're on task. And if you don't agree with the topic, it says, do you agree or disagree? It's okay to disagree. You do not have to agree. And in part 3, if you're having a discussion with the examiner, maybe one of the questions you say, oh no, I don't agree with that at all. That's okay. Tell the examiner, and then tell the examiner why. Idioms are okay to use, but again, make sure you understand them correctly before you use them. It's better to use a collocation. And as you watch and you practice and you get ready for the speaking test, you're going to know where you feel strong and where you feel maybe you need some improvement. That's okay. Even as native speakers, we know that about ourselves. So don't think it's just because it's English. But if you know your strength, you go in and you can use that strength. Up. And here I am at questions already. Michael, that went fast. Do you want to jump in and add anything before we take questions?
No, I think you covered a lot of it. It was very comprehensive. I will say one thing about idioms.
Yeah.
I really like to remind students to be careful with them because in the band descriptors it mentions idiomatic language. That doesn't mean saying things like it's raining cats and dogs and you know the elephant in the room. You can use collocations and you can use other idiomatic language is what we're really looking for. So your ability to memorize, you know, some idiom that you read in a book somewhere, it's really not necessary, and actually it comes across as quite unnatural. So I actually recommend students to avoid them unless they really understand them and they're really appropriate, because they're so situational. And you know, if you listen to us speaking for the last 2 hours, I don't think we said any idioms like that. You know, we've obviously used collocation and other idiomatic language, but I think I said maybe right off the bat that's a baseball kind of idiom, but you know, native speakers don't use them actually as often as people think. So just be careful with idioms. Study collocations instead of idioms. Idioms are good, but you know, you have to use them right.
Sorry, I think too, Michael, that's the point, is that they might use an idiom incorrectly. And that takes their whole speaking test in the wrong direction. Do I see any questions in the chat? Oh my goodness. Yes, any speaking, writing, or IELTS question? It's important to strike
So a collocation would be like words that are frequently used together. So like strong coffee. So strong and coffee are independent of each other, but we use them together often. It means like, you know, the coffee has a lot of caffeine in it.
Or mild weather.
Mild weather, yeah, something like that.
It's important to strike a balance between formality and
Okay,
naturalness.
Susan, I'll read it to you. It's important to strike a balance between formality and naturalness in our language use. So for IELTS speaking, when we use the idiomatic expression, it means speaking becomes colloquial. Which one is better to speak, formally or colloquially? How important is it to use a fancy word? So is it more important to speak formally or naturally? And how can we use fancy words? So why don't you answer the first part? I'll answer the second part about fancy words. I have an opinion on that.
Okay, the first part is strike a balance between formality and naturalness.
Yeah.
So the IELTS, we use idiomatic. It means speaking becomes colloquial. Yeah, you got to strike a balance. You don't want to be too formal. You do want to be natural, but colloquial language, again, it's, Michael, I tend to tell them it's like idioms, stay away from it. Try to
Yeah.
avoid more natural
So
speech.
yeah, so I think it also depends what section you're talking about in part one. Part one is
Of
about you
course.
and kind of your background and who you are, so you can speak a little more informally. But as it goes on in section two and section three, you want to speak more formally. I would say the IELTS, you want to use the same language you might use in a job interview, for example. So you want to express who you are as a person, but you're also in a semi-formal setting. So there is a balance there. But I think in part one you can be a little more casual and less formal. And the second part of the question, how important is it to use a fancy word? So I don't know what a fancy word is. I think what you're looking for is what they call low frequency vocabulary.
Right.
All right. So really, I don't know if I spelled it wrong. But we're looking for low frequency vocabulary. So again, we're not looking for fancy words or academic words or super formal words. We're looking for words that are appropriate and either synonyms or helping you to paraphrase or describe something. So again, lexical resources, we're looking for appropriateness. And then if we are listening for anything, it is low frequency, which means uncommon.
And we want the words to flow, to be, as Michael said, to be used appropriately, to make your speech flow naturally.
Okay, another question on task 2, the writing section. If an essay includes a counter argument in a paragraph, is that going to help improve the band score? Well, maybe. So it depends on the question. If the question is asking you to analyze both sides, then you need to provide a counter argument. So it depends on the question. So if the question is asking you to do that, then yes, you need to provide that. However, if it's asking for your opinion, you don't want to provide a counter argument because you are giving your opinion and you want to show why you're correct. I think what you're asking is maybe saying, well, some people believe this, but I believe this, and this is why it's better. So that can be okay too, but it really depends. So you can kind of use that to strengthen your argument as an example. I think that would be okay. But again, you want to be careful because you don't want to make a strong argument on the other side and then not defend yourself. So I tend to tell students or candidates to take a strong position at the beginning and stick with that the whole way through. And if the IELTS wants you to do something, they'll ask you to do it.
Also, Michael, I think a lot of writing teachers teach that you have to defend your point and then give the counter argument and then say why your argument is better. So you kind of got to move away from that in the IELTS writing, number one, because of the way Michael told you to write, and number two, for time. You might not have time to develop that counter argument and then to say why your argument is better. And you don't
Right.
want the counter argument to be your last paragraph.
Right. So, the IELTS has its own format that I covered, and
Right.
we're not looking for your ability to refute counter arguments. It's not an essay that your homeroom teacher, your high school writing teacher is giving to you. Okay? Yeah. I believe the link is going to be, I think you get an email from your registration, and then we have a Facebook, it's going to be on YouTube as well. So, and those band descriptors are available at IELTS.org. So all the materials we use today, they're official. And Susan and I are IELTS experts.
We hope. We try.
So you can download materials at IELTS.org. those band descriptors, and then a video recording, I believe, is available, and you can watch it on YouTube. But yeah, we have time. If there's more questions, I mean, you know, there's always something we can answer. We didn't cover listening or reading, so if you have any questions related to that, that's fine as well.
And I do have my favorite slide up of all the languages where I've lived and taught, and a few extras. I have to say thank you to all of you for coming today and enjoying our presentation. We had a wonderful time presenting to you. Oh, I see a couple more questions here.
Just saying thank you. If we don't have any more questions, maybe we'll leave it for one more minute, and then we can go have some dinner.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael, for all your help too.
Yes. Thanks, Susan. Well done. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. How can I prepare? Okay. So we do have one more question. Well, again, this is different for everyone. What I recommend is taking a practice test. So there's resources available online, and finding out what your baseline is. So depending on your level, you may need to take a course, or you may need to do some self-study. It's really difficult. That's a very, very broad general question. Courses, intensive courses with teachers that know what they're doing, they're really beneficial, and they'll improve your score in 3 to 6 months. You know, but you can also practice on your own. So I talked about how you can do writing on your own. ChatGPT now can mark your essays. You can speak to people on Zoom and join clubs. I mean, there's tons of online resources. The only ones that I can really recommend would be IELTS.org, or Cambridge.
IDP maybe.
And then I was going to say IDP and British Council. I think so any of those 4 resources, they are going to be official, and they're going to be up to date and exact. I know British Council has tons of free resources. They have free courses, webinars, everything, you know, apps. There's so much there that you can use. Anything outside of that, if you're in a Facebook group, or you're downloading materials from random websites, be very careful with that. The grammar, there may be mistakes. The information may be wrong. I've seen incorrect information. So be very careful with unofficial sources. But yeah, I would start with online materials, get a baseline, see where you are, and maybe you need a course, or maybe you need some self-study, but it depends on different people. Good question. Okay, any
other
last questions?
Sub ID, everyone. Thank you.
All right,
for
well,
coming.
yes. Thank you again, Susan. Thank you all for
Thanks,
joining.
Mike.
Good luck, and I hope you get the band score you are looking for.
Yes,
Thank
we're
you.
cheering you on.
Bye-bye.
Good night.